morning of January 28th, Maharashtra Deputy Chief Minister Ajit Pawar boarded a chartered Learjet 45 from Mumbai to Baramati. He was travelling in the privately owned aircraft to address public meetings ahead of the Zilla Parishad elections. The Deputy Chief Minister's aircraft took off from Mumbai at around 8:10 a.m. The weather was 22 degrees Celsius, quite humid, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. A little over half an hour later, his plane would crash in Baramati, killing all 5 people aboard. So what exactly happened? Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX Deep Dive with me, Megha Sharma. And today, that is what we attempt to decode. Let's take you through the final moments of the tragic flight. The air distance from Mumbai to Baramati is merely 206 to 208 kilometers, a distance that takes anywhere between 20 to 40 minutes to complete. The short-distance flight proceeded normally at first. At around 8:40 a.m., the aircraft made its first attempt to land in Baramati, and as per records, the conditions seemed fairly normal with winds of 13 kilometers per hour, considered perfectly okay for flying. Now, before we dive deep into the specifics of the flight's path, it is also important to understand the location where the incident took place. The Baramati airport features a sole runway that primarily serves general aviation, private jets, and pilot training. It is also home to flight schools like the Academy of Carver Aviation Private Limited, which also helps manage the advisory tower. Located in the hilly terrain, the elevation of the airfield is 604 meters and is spread over an area of 451 acres. Speaking of the runway, the landing strip is 1,770 meters long and 30 meters wide, with turning pads on both ends. Importantly, there are no navigational or visual aids available on the airstrip other than the VHF communication by the advisory tower and the windsock. The strip is described as a tabletop runway. That is a runway located on the top of a plateau or a hill with one or both ends adjacent to a steep precipice which drops into a gorge. Such runways create an illusion of being at the same level as the planes below, thus requiring a very precise visual approach when instrument landing is not used or available. As per information, the Baramati airport does not have full instrumental landing system facilities, relying instead on visual and manual approaches. The uncontrolled airfield has no ATC but an advisory tower managed by senior pilots from adjacent flight school who monitor traffic in the local airspace and give advisories over VHF to the pilots flying in circuits and around the area. This brings us back to the Learjet 45, registered as VTSSK 8 minutes after taking off from Mumbai. The VTSSK made its first radio contact with the Baramati advisory station as it was descending towards the airport. During this initial contact, visibility and weather information were exchanged and calm winds and visibility were reported to the crew. With the plane roughly 30 nautical miles inbound, the pilots were instructed to descend at their discretion under visual meteorological conditions. Although fog and low visibility were noted locally and by eyewitnesses later on, as per official communication, the crew was advised that the winds were calm and visibility of up to 3 meters. Such visibility is considered marginal or poor for visual flight rules, which typically requires minimum 5,000 meters visibility. Following this, sometime between 8:20 and 8:30 a.m., the aircraft reported being on final approach to runway 11 at Baramati. However, the crew then reported that the runway was not visible and initiated go-around or an aborted landing. Flight tracking data shows that while performing the go-around to attempt its second landing, the plane made a large turn and did not align properly with the runway. After completing the go-around, the aircraft was asked about its position and the crew once again reported on final approach of runway 11. Asked to report runway in sight, crew said it was not and they would call when the runway was visible. Between 8:42 and 8:43 a.m., following a period of circling and waiting for a search approach, the crew made its final contact to the tower, reporting that the runway is in sight. At 8:43 a.m., the aircraft was once again cleared to land on runway 11 by Baramati airfield staff. However, no read-back confirmation of the clearance was received from the flight crew. Merely a minute after that, according to flight tracking data, the aircraft disappeared from radar at around 8:45 a.m. Reports and eyewitnesses state that the aircraft became unstable during this time with loud noises heard during the final descent. As per reports, no mayday call was issued by the crew. Just as the clock struck 8:46 a.m., the plane crashed in an open airfield merely 100 meters from the runway threshold, bursting into flames immediately on impact. An eyewitness said that the plane appeared unstable and was flying towards the runway when it suddenly lost balance at low altitude and fell 100 feet before approaching it. Crash landing near the runway threshold, the aircraft went off the side and impacted the ground. The plane exploded, followed by multiple smaller blasts. Eyewitnesses reported 4 to 5 explosions in total. The Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau and the Directorate General of Civil Aviation have taken over the investigation, probing weather, crew action, visibility conditions, airport infrastructure, communication logs and aircraft systems to determine what caused the crash. Most significantly, the incident has raised questions about the dangers of tabletop runways, while also prompting people to take a closer look at the aircraft and its operator, the VSR Aviation Private Limited. While Baramati airstrip lacks the typical notorious tabletop design, it comes very close, leading to security over aviation hazards and India's challenging airstrips. While not amongst India's 5 primary tabletop runways, this is the 3rd crash that has occurred at the airport, thrusting these perilous designs back into focus. While Baramati's configuration differs, the tragedy serves as a grim reminder of India's aviation vulnerability at high altitude, under-equipped sites. As investigators comb the wreckage, questions linger over regulatory oversight and pilot preparedness in an era of expanding regional flights. Dr. Vandana Singh, she's an aviation expert who's also joining me on the telecast. Dr. Singh, such an unfortunate incident. There was the plane crash that was devastating that happened in Ahmedabad last year. We see there's another crash that has happened in Baramati. All 5 people on board, especially the VIP who was traveling with them, Ajit Pawar, was also found dead. This is also going to bring a lot of focus. There have been 3 such crashes that have already happened in the past at the Baramati airstrip. But in terms of the information, the first account information that we are receiving, this preliminary investigation that has happened, what do you think exactly happened?
Thank you, Megha, for having me on your show. It is indeed a very tragic day for India as such, for the country as such, because of the loss of such a great leader. Also to the entire passengers, 6 passengers lost in this air crash, including the security personnel that was inside aboard this aircraft. So at the very first instance, when you look at this, Megha, it is very clear that there was non-acquisition of the visual runway was not visible at all to the pilot, and there was a clear negative from the pilot when it was first asked whether it can see the runway. That's when the go-round happened. That's when the second sequence happened. And when the second sequence happened, we have to understand there also, as you rightfully said, there was no readback, which is very, very important. That means clear, there could be some distraction, there could be some sort of cockpit instability. Also, it veered away from the runway. Obviously, there was no visual impact as such. In fact, more than 100 odd feet away, it went into the stony area or into the bushes, and on impact, it caught fire. We have to understand that here there was this was, like you said, a tabletop runway, which is slightly on an elevated ground, and there was no instrument landing system over here which could actually guide or even align the aircraft or the equipment to the runway. So having said that, and with no readback, the way it went, it seems it caught on one shoulder, had the impact of the aircraft. The left engine cannot be seen. As you know, this is a twin engine aircraft, and on impact, it caught fire. And obviously, since it was carrying that fuel, which would have brought it back into Mumbai from Baramati, that was the plan. That was the plan for.
Yeah, but then there have been innumerable aircraft that have taken off and landed at the Baramati airstrip. This was not the first time. This was also not for the first time that during a foggy time period, there have been airplanes, choppers that have descended to the airstrip on the runway. how does this case stand apart? And also, what is also sort of glaring is the fact that the visibility was about 300 meters, which is not so bad. It will allow for a pilot to fly in the air and even land, depending on the visibility conditions. And the fact that the second time around the pilot said that the runway was visible to him, and that's why he attempted to descend. That's why he attempted to land the plane. So what all this information that is now, this is of course, there's more investigation that is going to happen, more information will be brought out, the black box recordings will also be deciphered, but why, I mean, the mystery shrouds that there was visibility, you were able to see the runway, why could you not land properly?
Absolutely. So this is where the pointer is, that during the second sequence, but let's not forget, in the first case, the captain, the pilot in command clearly said negative when it came to visibility. So yes, the visibility was there, but not that much for the equipment or the aircraft to land. And the pilot said negative over there. When the second sequence happened, Megha, then it seemed to take a wider circle to come back. And in that attempt, it did not get on the runway. It fell short of the runway. It veered into a bushy or a stony area, like you rightfully said, and it impacted. So was the visibility that good that it could land, or was the visibility that was not so good and it tried to land and was under pressure because there was a rally over there that had to be done, that it could not be diverted to PNQ, which was another 100 kilometers away, where there would be a proper ATC, where there would be a proper ILS and all of the other facilities available. Baramati had none of that. Aircrafts land, aircrafts take off, but aircrafts accidents also happen.
Also really, the fact that there's also one more concern that has been raised, that this was an uncontrolled airfield. The fact that there was not a proper ATC that was set up. It was the flying school instructors who actually communicated with the pilots, with the captain, for all communication that is required for a plane to land or take off. So the question, why, do you think there should have been an ATC that should have been installed at the Baramati airstrip?
Absolutely. I do think that there should be an ATC or as well as an instrument landing system. But having said that, Megha, there are so many rallies during election time. There are so many things that happen. There are choppers flying in and out. There are other smaller jets flying in and out. And these kind of jets are very commonly used by politicians, by dignitaries. And these are very good jets. Though the question here is, was there some sort of a miscommunication, because there was no read back when the second clearance was given by this training school. So obviously there has been some issue over there because the runway was not visible. It has clearly veered off the runway, and the impact, because it was carrying the fuel to come back, has caused there so much fire that nobody was spared. And obviously it didn't land on the runway. So definitely we need to be more, what shall I say, there are places where aircrafts land and there are places where aircrafts are not able to land. So what exactly went into it is now in the hands of AIB and the cockpit voice recorder, the flight data recorder, to come up with the facts. But the question really is circling around the visibility and a sort of miscommunication, distraction that can lead, because there was no read back from the captain, who was very well experienced and had enough flying hours, as I'm told.
Right, absolutely. So we will have to wait for that investigation to give us more information. It'll have to take a few hours, few days to actually come to a conclusion of what actually happened, what went wrong. Thank you very much, Dr. Vandana Singh, for joining me, sharing your views. On that note, I step into a short break. Thanks for watching.